A few weeks ago now, I had a presentation to a group of marketing professionals from junior to mid to senior level marketing professionals who were part of a marketing mentorship program as candidates of the program, and also as mentors within the program. This is a topic I was given to speak on, and I I had a great time speaking on this because I think that the topic was very apt in terms of kind of where things have come to and where things are sort of going. And I'm confident that you will be able to, take one or two things away that you can also apply in your daily work, whether for your business, your brand, or if you service clients. So the topic I was given was digital as a growth engine, building systems to scale attention, trust, and revenue. To do justice to this, I'm going to share some strategic imperatives, things I consider fundamental to being able to understand very clearly what this idea of digital as a growth engine means. And of course, I'll go into some conclusions. Of course, a bit of introduction of who I am and what I do. But before I get into that, this is the premise upon which this entire conversation we're about to have is going to be built on. And it's that digital is no longer a department; it is an economic infrastructure. And this highlights the point that for so many years we've thought about digital in many ways as a tool, or in some cases as a channel, especially for digital marketing as a service. But the transition that I'm challenging you to make is to move from that mindset or that approach to more a systems approach. And I'm going to show you how you can do that, and also how global companies we all know, have been able to do this successfully. So, my hope is that at the end of this session, you are able to come out on the other side with these very key learnings. Number one is that you've made a mindset shift, just like I spoke about right now, but more about moving from an operator as a marketing operator to more of a C-suite thinking. You have to start thinking at the way the C-level executive would think about the work that you do. This will feel more like a business, presentation rather than a marketing mentorship, program or a marketing presentation. And that's the shift that I am hoping that you are able to make at the end of this session. Number two is that I'm also going to give you a very simplified approach to how you can start to implement these learnings in your business, or with your brand or company or clients you service, so that this is not just another tutorial or academic session, no, but something that's going to be very practical for you. And these principles that the approach I'm going to show you is going to be built on it's going to be built on the fact that we can no longer treat attention, trust, and revenue in the way the topic spoke about it as isolated or separate tasks. And I'm going to be teaching you those principles that you can start to apply to approach all of these as as one system. Number three is I'm also going to show you case studies of companies that we all know, who have done this and have done it really, really well. And then number four is that at the end of this session, you not only are, approach the work you do as just a marketer, but somebody who is able to design these growth systems, because it is these systems that ensure that what you are doing as a marketing person is translating into real business outcomes. So this is my hope. And at the end of this session, we're going to revisit this to be sure that we kind of check all these four boxes. Who am I? My name is Aitai Olayemi, just for those who don't know. And, I've had the opportunity of working within the broader marketing com space, and also this growth space for over 15 years now across multiple markets. UAE, obviously Nigeria, which I'm based. I'm from UAE, USA, UK, Ghana, Kenya, other parts of the continent, and so on and so forth. I've also had the opportunity of working with over 50 plus brands and businesses across 15 different verticals, whether it's energy, telcos, government, e-commerce, entertainment and media, consumer goods, of course, financial services, and so on and so forth. And then finally, which is my, what I'm most excited about in recent times, is the Diary of a CMO podcast. If you haven't listened, if you haven't checked it out, please make sure you do. It's a podcast where I sit down with marketing leaders, CMOs, business leaders across the world and Africa, of course, and we talk about the topics that matter today. We've had the privilege of speaking to really, really remarkable people, like the former global chairman of Advertising Week, which is one of the largest B2B events in the world, March Etna. Spoken with Gonzalo Brujo, who's the president and global CEO of Interbrand, the curators of the best global brands list. I think that's what it's called. Enzo Scarcella, who is the chief consumer officer for MTM Group, Steve Abayko, CEO and founder of Extreme Ideas Group, Zizwe Vendla, the CMO of Safaricom PLC, and a host of incredible minds across the continent and the rest of the world. So please make sure you check it out. We recently, within the United Digital business, which is the company I run, we recently set up this business unit we refer to as United IO, where we are building enterprise AI systems for clients. We deploy end-to-end agentic workflows for clients across the continent, and I'll talk, and you see more about this in the future as well, in terms of the things that we are doing and what we are building for clients, and how we're deploying, how we're leveraging AI, to really drive real business outcomes for the clients and the businesses we work with. So I spoke earlier about the strategic imperatives that we needed to cover, which are like the foundational principles, and I hope that this will give you this is the context I want you to approach this conversation from. The first thing is that you need to move from thinking about marketing as a task-based, discipline to outcome-based discipline. For a lot of us, we think mostly in campaigns, in ideas, in content calendar, especially for digital marketers and so on and so forth. But I wanted to think more from an outcome-based standpoint, where we're not just thinking about campaigns, we're thinking about, how do we drive, X number of users for the business? How do we lower customer acquisition cost? How do we grow brand value by X%, and so on and so forth? These are outcomes that have real impact on the business, not just activities that we do throughout the year. And what this does is that it moves marketing from being just a cost center to a value creator. And these are some of the conversations we have on the Diary of a CMO, by the way. And again, I encourage you to check it out so that you can learn from that repository of knowledge. So this is the first imperative, is that you have to think about marketing as outcome-based versus task-based, where you are really focused on the outcomes for the business, and not just whether one campaign or the other have been deployed, and so on and so forth. So marketing moving from a cost center to a value creator. And these are some of the conversations, like I said, we have on the podcast. This is Kenzie Nobanda, who is the group CMO for Nedbank, Africa's fourth largest bank. At least at the time of having this conversation with her. And she's the one who I took this quote from, which is, marketing is a value creator, not a cost center. And the more we approach marketing this way, and again, in the context of what I just explained as well, the better for us. And this is the mindset shift that I want us to have. This is one of the imperatives that we need to have in mind as we go into the detail of the subject we're discussing today, which is digital as a growth engine. The other quote I have here is, marketing is business. Again, another quote from the podcast with the president and global CEO of Interbrand. They curate the best global brands list, where they rank the most valuable brands across the world, and they have their own their own proprietary way of valuing these brands. And he says that marketing is business. There's no other essence per se for marketing other than the fact that it is business. It is a critical function to drive business growth and outcomes. So that's the first imperative. The second one is that digital is not just a channel. Yes, it can function as a channel for the purpose of, deploying a marketing campaign and so on and so forth. But it's more a system in which we operate as practitioners or as businesses or as brands. Is that we have to make that shift from thinking about marketing digital as a channel, but more as a systems infrastructure. So it's that, for many of us, which is kind of, I'm sure is the case for lots of people who might probably be watching this, is that we've always thought about digital as a marketing channel. So we talk about, say, for example, out of home, PR, digital, and so on and so forth. But for the context of what we're going to discuss today, it's important that you think about digital not just as a channel, but as a system, as an infrastructure in which you operate. And another quote from the Diary of a CMO podcast is by Bahrain. It's an ex group CMO from Pernod Ricard, Qantas, and the bank, and so on and so forth. And she says that a lot of us treat digital specifically like a black box, where whatever goes on there is isolated to the channel, quote unquote now, and it doesn't need to have any real impact on the business, and that's not the case. What she's saying is that digital must play a very critical role in driving real business outcomes, so that it starts to matter, what we do there, not just the engagement for the sake of engagement, not just likes or comments or whatever for the sake of those, but how does all of that drive overall business objectives. The other quote I have here is by, Bronwyn, who is the CMO of Ackermans and others, a South African brand, again on the Diary of a CMO podcast, where she says that in order to become a CMO, and she was talking about, professional growth for marketers, is that you have to have a full view of what marketing actually means. You have to have a full view of what marketing actually means, not just from a one perspective, whether it's digital or out of home or media buying or whatever. Is that in order for you to really get to the heights of your career, you have to have a very full view of what marketing actually means and how everything ties together. And finally, is that you have to think in systems, which is the purpose of this conversation. Is that, as marketers, it is great to, deploy really remarkable campaigns, but I also want to challenge you, which is the purpose of this presentation, to start thinking in systems. Is start recognizing that, competition in today's world is no longer brand versus brand, or just brand versus brand, but it's a competition of system versus system. It is the brand or business that is able to build the most efficient, the most productive, the most impactful system that is going to ultimately win. And that's my challenge to you, is that I need you to start thinking about building systems, not just building campaigns. Another quote, and I think this is the final one before getting to the topic itself, is by Don Rowlands, who is the CEO of Dentsu Sub-Saharan African region. Again, on Diary of a CMO podcast, where she says, understanding integration of creativity, media, and tech, understanding the intersection of these three, disciplines or platforms or whatever, is what marketing is about in today's world. And there's no other way for you to approach marketing this way than to have like a systems approach to how you think. And then finally, I like to say that marketing is no longer a game of basketball, or rather no longer a game of golf. It's a game of basketball. What I mean by this analogy is we as marketers are classically used to thinking about marketing in the form of, we take these long swings, again, to the golf analogy, we take these long swings, i.e. our big thematic campaigns, and then we go on these long walks between tees, and, we're not doing much, we're just kind of coasting along, ensuring that we're posting consistently, and so on and so forth. And marketing is no longer that today. Marketing has become a game of basketball. What I mean by that is every minute every department, every skill set, every person matter more than ever. It is how all of these work together, from product to marketing to sales to operations to customer success. This is how all of these work together every second of the way. That is really going to define how we look at marketing in today's world. These are the imperatives I want us to have. These shift from marketing as a cost center to a value creator, from task-based way of looking at marketing to more outcome-based, moving from thinking about digital as a channel to more as a system, and then also to think about, as marketers, building systems, not just campaigns. Now, let's get into the topic. Now, if you haven't noticed, I would use system, but again, think about it interchangeably with the word engine here. So, I don't want you to think that I'm talking about two different things. This is the beginning of everything that we're going to talk about today. Again, everything I said earlier was just about, the imperatives, the shifts that we needed to have in the way we approach marketing. Now, this is the first thing I want you to get as we explore this topic. Is first of all, is that as marketers, we are used to thinking about, what we do from a linear standpoint in terms of our classic, customer journey funnel. But I want you to move from that to thinking about these growth system or this growth engine as a compounding loop. Each of these elements of attention, trust, and revenue, going back to the topic of today, building, systems that scale attention, trust, and revenue, is that you have to think about this not as individual or separate goals, but to think about them as one single reinforcing loop. And, what you have on the left is our classic way of thinking about, what we do with marketing is this sort of linear funnel, but rather to shift to this sort of compounding loop of where attention drives trust, trust drives revenue, revenue drives trust, and trust drives attention. You have to think about how is what we are doing, sort of reinforcing this loop. And that's the way I want you to approach building these growth systems and using digital to build these growth systems. So this really is the money slide, if I can put it that way. This is the one slide I don't want you to forget, is that rather than thinking about what you do as marketers as a linear attention, trust, revenue, sort of in the classic customer journey funnel, is that you have to think about it rather as a compounding loop where every element reinforces the other. Now, within that growth system is, and in building that growth system, in building that reinforcing loop, in building that compounding loop, you have to think about it with across these three different layers. First is the credibility layer. Is how do you automate trust? How does this layer move our business or our brand from promising customers or promising prospects to proving that we are who we say we are and we can deliver the kind of value we say we can deliver? This is the credibility layer where we build the trust that the business requires to be able to thrive in today's world. Number two is the transaction layer. This is about removing every friction that might exist between the customer's desire to pay us and our bank account in a sense. This is how do we make buying from us as easy as possible. And I'm going to show some case studies about that. And finally is the intelligence layer. This is the layer where every touch point with a customer, especially the transaction touch point, becomes a data point that helps our business predict the market. How do we turn every touch point with our customer to a data point that is going to help us sort of continue to build a successful business going into the future? In building this growth engine or this growth system, you have to think about it across these three layers: credibility layer, transaction layer, and the intelligence layer. Credibility layer, how do we bring trust? Transaction, how do we completely remove the friction between the customer's desire to pay us and our bank account? And the intelligence layer, how does every touch point with the customer become a data point that helps us build a future proof business? How does every data point with one customer provide the intelligence that we need to attract or acquire the next customer? By so doing, build a future proof business. So these are the three layers I want you to think about when you think about building growth systems that is driven by digital. The next question is, how do we approach this? Because it seems like something that's complicated, but it's not. I think as you start to experiment with this approach to building growth systems, obviously you get real better at it. But one of the questions we get asked by businesses and clients is that, do we have to do all three? Because it seems like a lot of work to do. My recommendation to you as you watch or listen to this is just pick a layer and dominate it in your category. And we've seen that with with some of the clients or some of the brands we're going to talk about in this case study, is that we find with clients is that they tend to be doing really well with one or two of the layers, but not so great with one layer. So what you want to do is that you want to pick a layer and dominate it, whether you are thinking about it for your business as you look at the category you play in, or whether you're thinking about it for a client's business to see where the largest value can be created for the client. So you can just pick one layer and dominate it. Obviously, the ideal picture would be to continue to build and to continue to track positively with each of these layers. But again, in order for you not to be overwhelmed or for the team not to be overwhelmed and so on and so forth. Again, even at the point of getting the buy-in of your key stakeholders internally or externally, it's always recommended that you pick a layer and dominate it. Now, and in order for you to be able to pick what layer you want to focus on, what you want to do is this sort of 3-step audit. And in order for you to be able to start implementing this growth system within your business, is that you have to start with this 3-step audit. And the first step of the audit is the credibility layer, where you want to look at the market you are playing in or the category you are playing in and find where there is a trust gap. For most industries or for most categories, you would find that there is typically a trust gap somewhere, whether it is, counterfeiting products for consumer goods, or hidden fees in financial services, or delivery delays when it comes to e-commerce businesses, whatever the case may be. Is that you have to find within your category and the market you play in, where is the trust gap, and then you build for it. To build for it does not necessarily mean you want to build something really sophisticated. In some categories, in some businesses, is that just by having a physical human agent is how you close the trust gap. And we've seen these happen in some categories. For example, financial services, with everything that has happened with companies like Paga and the likes, where just by having a physical agent, they pretty much dominated the sector or the segment of the market that they play in by closing that trust gap. Whatever that gap is within your space, is that you have to figure out how do you close that gap. And by doing that really, really, really well, you are able to start building a growth system that will ultimately start to reinforce itself. Because what happens is when you close that trust gap and then people experience your product or your service and they are able to talk about it without being solicited, you suddenly realize that as you are building trust by closing the trust gap, you are also driving revenue, which in turns also reinforces what you're doing to close to continue to close that gap. And the more satisfied customers you have, the more attention you are creating because they continue to talk about your business. So is that you have created that sort of reinforcing loop or that compounding loop, or as some people like to call it, that flywheel. So that's the first audit you need to make. And we've seen that again with some of the brands in the market. For example, with MoneyPoint, what MoneyPoint simply did was to close that trust gap of instant by creating this instant settlement feature. For a lot of platforms or financial services providers, it will typically take maybe a day or 2 days for the money to reflect in the account of a merchant after a transaction. But in this case, there was this instant settlement, product or feature that MoneyPoint had created, and that closed that trust gap and continued to reinforce the level of revenue that they were driving for the business. And based on all of the merchants they were satisfying, they continued to talk about it. Think about it, even as end users or as consumers, when we go to a merchant, we actually request for a MoneyPoint terminal, and that's a completely different conversation. But the point is that the more efficiency or the more they were able to close that trust gap with the instant settlement feature product, the more it reinforced, the revenue they were driving for business, and the more these merchants were talking about them, and that loop just sort of continues to reinforce itself. If you look at Unilever as an example as well, in a category of consumer goods where just being available is one of the ways you close a trust gap, is one of the ways you build trust. They did that by building this sort of digital route to market tool that helped Unilever as a company to ensure that the product is never out of stock. And by so doing, they continue to build trust with the customers, or to continue to build trust, in their case, with the distribution partners, whether it's modern trade like the Spars or the ShopRites or whatever. The more they knew they could always count on Unilever to always be available, the better it was for the Unilever business, and that also continued to reinforce that loop. The next thing is, after the credibility audit, you want to do a transaction audit. Is that you want to look within the category you play in, or the client or the business you work in, to try to figure out how do I ensure that every possible touch point or every possible transaction opportunity is maxed out, so that anytime this customer wants to do business with me, they are not restricted because I only have a transfer only policy, or because it takes 2 days before the money reflects in the account, or because whatever their excuse might be their excuse might be not to transact with us. We want to make sure we close all of that gap. And that's what this second step is this transaction audit. Where are the other touch points? Where are the other opportunities for our customer to do business with us that we have not tapped into as yet? And I'm going to show you an example. In some categories, just by having a USSD string is so much better, so much better than building some kind of a mobile app, in an attempt to close that sort of transaction gap. And I'm going to show you an example right now. It's the MTN case study, is where I remember back in the day where if you needed to recharge your airtime, one of the things you needed to do was to go to a local vendor, buy a recharge card, and then you load the airtime. Today, I'm almost certain for everyone who's watching this video right now, you don't do that anymore. You do that using this logic of the strings to buy your airtime and do other forms of financial transaction. When MTN perfected this logic, they didn't have to rely on customers going to a local vendor to buy their airtime. They knew that just with their mobile phone or their feature phone, customers could very easily buy their airtime using this strings or logic, as the case may be. Forgive me if I'm using the wrong analogy when it comes to these things with telephony. But the point is, that MTN, by solving for this, they didn't have to, customers didn't have to go to a local vendor to buy airtime. They could just do it on their phones, whether it was a feature phone or a smartphone. And that's MTN closing that transaction gap by figuring this out. And when they figured this out, they also then became sort of the highway that every one of us as business owners, as enterprises, could plug into to also continue to also use that same feature of the star 123 hash logic to serve our customers' transaction needs as well. Which is why today almost every business you can pay them, whether via their app, whether bank transfers, whether through the USSDs, and so on and so forth. And that's how you close the transaction gap. It would be interesting for you to find out that the reason your business isn't doing so well with certain customer segments is because you don't have a way that they can do business with you just via USSD feature. The other example is the PiggyVest one. And like I told you, the transaction layer is about removing the friction. And the friction here was that customers had to battle with their, freewheel before they could actually be disciplined enough to save. Instead of waiting for customers to solve their, battle with, or to win their battle with freewheel, what PiggyVest did was to create a product that allowed, that removed that friction by ensuring that every time the customer did any other form of transaction, PiggyVest would take X amount of money and automatically save that. That removed that friction of willpower and allowed PiggyVest to build a remarkable business for themselves. And interestingly, we thanked them for it. But the point is that they were able to remove that friction in a very creative and innovative way, at least at the time, and that drove really great business or revenue for them. So, and the final audit, and we talked about the credibility audit, the transaction audit. Now we're talking about the intelligence audit. How are we leveraging the data we have on our customers, whether it's their, demographic data or behavioral data or transaction data, whatever kind of data it is? How are we harnessing that data to be able to drive the kind of intelligence we need to drive future transactions for the business, to future proof the business? And this is one that, in my experience, I find that most categories and most businesses have a challenge with. And it's one of the things that we solve with United IO. And I'm not going to get into that right now. But the point is that you have to look at your category. Where are the data points that are not currently being harnessed to future proof businesses, to drive future revenues or customer acquisition? And that is something that the moment you're able to crack that for your category, it unlocks new growth opportunities for the business. In some cases, just having a WhatsApp solution, a WhatsApp bot, is often a better intelligence layer than trying to set up this AI suite. Again, I'm saying that because the temptation is that when we talk about the intelligence layer, we almost immediately assume these sophisticated platforms and tech. It doesn't have to be the case. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes a simple solution is way better than trying to build something complex. Of course, there will be cases where you need something more complex, but what we've seen in the Nigerian market is there's huge opportunity in just deploying very simple, intelligent solutions. I'm going to show you some examples. The case of OPay, as we start to try to round up this session now. In the case of OPay, is that OPay used the data they had on customers who have been using their platforms to do transactions to figure out how they can use that to deploy high value financial services for the same customer. Coca-Cola, in a similar fashion like the Unilever case, is that they've built systems that predict demand in the areas where that there's opportunity, and this is this systems are built on local demographics, historical sales velocity, and all of these other external factors to start to determine, to start to predict what is demand going to look like in a certain area at a certain time. And by so doing, they are able to experience outsized growth compared to other competitors within their own sort of category as well. So it's really about how do you build these intelligence layers on top of your existing data points to really start to extract valuable intelligence that you would use to drive future business or future revenue for your businesses or for the clients that you serve. So to start to implement this into your business, and as we start to wrap this up, is that you have to think about it. First is the credibility audit, where's the trust gap? The transaction audit, where is that transaction gap? Are we sure that customers are able to do business with us across every touch point that they might find themselves? And number three is the intelligence layer. Where are the data points that we are not currently harnessing within the business that can help us unlock opportunities for future growth, whether as a business or when we look at the entire category as a whole? As we start to round this up, I wanted to leave you with one final thought, which is the AI conversation. And it's for you to start to think about and imagine the implication of the AI capabilities we have today when applied to the concept we've discussed so far. For example, imagine the application of AI to the intelligence layer in terms of harnessing data points. I mean, that literally is what the AI technology is all about. So there's so much value to be unlocked, not just for businesses, but for the entire African continent as we deepen our expertise in these areas. And I want to encourage, if there's any one of you, and this is what we do with United IO, where we build this enterprise AI systems for businesses, and you're going to start seeing a lot of things that we're going to roll out in the coming weeks and months. We're so excited about everything that we're doing and also planning to do in the future. And I can't wait for you guys to see it. But in the meantime, if your business or your brand or your clients, you see where these capabilities might be very applicable, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm going to share some of my contact details pretty shortly. As we wrap this up, I wanted to leave you with what we started with, which is the this shift and this is very important. I think about this as the money slide, especially for a marketing community, that we have to move from that sort of linear where we think about marketing and what we do, and the classic, awareness, consideration, conversion, or action, that classic sort of linear approach, to more of this compounding loop when we're thinking of growth systems. It is very, very important for us to make that shift such that we do not treat every element of this growth system, whether it's attention or trust or revenue, as a standalone task or goal or team or whatever, but as an integral, as a critical part of this reinforcing loop, or the compounding loop, or flywheel, as some people like to call it. So this is the one slide I never want you to forget. So if you go back to the learning outcomes we set at the beginning of this conversation, is I hope that you started to make that shift from an operator mindset to more of a business mindset. I said earlier that this will feel more like a business conversation than a marketing conversation, and I'm sure you see why I said that. Number two is that with a simplified approach that we've shared, I hope that you can start to see how you, in your business or brand or the clients you service, can start to implement some of these principles and deliver real value for your clients or for your business or your brand. Number three, you saw the case studies we looked at. It's sort of behind the scenes for some of the companies that we all know, to see how they've, how they approach or how they've used these principles to build growth systems and build really successful companies or businesses. And finally, is that you now start to become not just a classic marketer, but the marketer who knows how to design the systems that are responsible for real business outcomes. And that's how you become indispensable in your field and in what you do. So That's all, folks. If there's anything, if you'd like to reach out to me, again, like I said, for your clients or your business, feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms, or for anything at all. I'm more than happy to chat. And of course, I did say as well that if you haven't subscribed to Diary of a CMO, please make sure you subscribe. It's an incredible, and I keep saying this, an incredible repository of knowledge that you can learn from in all of these conversations I've had with CMOs, marketing leaders, business leaders across the continent. There's so much you can learn from these conversations. So thank you very much, guys. See you.